It's March. It's basically spring. It feels like it outside. I went out in a t-shirt to take some photos earlier today, but all of that is irrelevant when you consider that it's Tutorial Tuesday. Welcome back to Tutorial Tuesday, where each and every Tuesday we bring a brand new, fresh photography tutorial. This week, we're going to dive back into Lightroom Classic and we are going to be taking a look at a beautiful sunset photo, how we can kind of unify the colors, play around with some masks, of course, and basically make the most of this photo. We're going to edit it together. It's a lovely sort of beach photo. We've got some stormy clouds. We've got the sunlight directly in the camera. There's a few little challenging things to deal with. Let's take a look at how we can make it work. Let's dive in. Okay, now this is the photo that we're going to be working with. It's a nice kind of wide angle shot of the beach, low tide. We've got the sunset happening here. We've got the cliffs, and we've got, I think, an interesting sky to be working with as well, because we've got the sun just poking through these pretty dark, stormy clouds. So a nice kind of sky to be working with. A couple of things we need to do immediately to kind of start with the photo. I'm actually going to just adjust the highlights and the shadows, I think, first. Bring those highlights down a bit. Bring the shadows up just so we can see what we're working with. I might even bring the overall exposure up, but we probably won't leave the photo in this position when we're actually done. I think we'll also come back to the white balance because I think that'll be important as well. But while we're here, I'm just going to add a little bit of clarity to the photo, a little bit of texture, and just a touch of vibrance as well. Now I'm going to come down, and the next thing I'm going to work on is actually the transform tab here. I'm going to go ahead and click auto and let Lightroom just kind of just straighten that up a little bit. I might need to go in and do some additional straightening. Something like that. I want to make sure that horizon is nice and straight. I think that looks okay. We might just, you know what? We might just play around a little bit with some of these sliders. Let's just zoom in a little bit there as well. Scale that up. I think that looks pretty good, actually. I like the look of that. I think I'm just going to adjust this vertical slider just to kind of change the look of the photo just a little bit. But we've got a nice straight horizon now. We've got the sun, I think, in a nice place. I like the look of the photo. What I do want to do is remove these people over on the right. We did have a person over on the left. We've lost that person now because we've kind of zoomed in a little bit. Let's come up to the remove tab here. And it's actually super easy within Lightroom. Now, all we have to do is go down here to distraction removal, people. It's going to detect the people in the scene. It's found the people on the right. It's found a couple of little bits on the left that it thinks are people. That's fine. There is a photographer over there. So we're going to click remove. Lightroom's going to do that for us using AI. So that's actually really handy. Makes it just much, much easier to get that done. There we go. We don't have to take it into Photoshop and do anything like that. We can just do it all within Lightroom. And now we have done the kind of basic initial edits that I wanted to do so that we know kind of where we are. We can see what we're working with. We've gotten rid of the distractions. We've straightened the photo. And we've done that all really quite fast. That's what's great about Lightroom now in 2026. It's just so easy to work with. Now I'm going to bring that contrast up a little bit as well, I think. And then I think going from there, we're going to start working with some of the masks. Now the first one I'm going to do, let's go into the masking panel here. I'm going to do a linear gradient, bring that up from the bottom right, so kind of opposite to where we've got the sun. And I'm going to bring the exposure down a little bit. I just want to darken this bottom right corner so that it feels like we've got light kind of coming from over there and kind of dark coming from over here. I think that looks quite nice. I'm actually going to also bring up the clarity a little bit. So we've just got a nice bit of detail in these rocks. I really, really like that, actually. The next thing I'm going to do is look at some of these adaptive sky presets over on the left. Now, if you're not familiar with those, the adaptive presets within Lightroom Classic actually go in and alter certain parts of your photo. So they are somewhat unique in that they will find, in this case, the sky, and mask that out and then apply a preset to that. So in this case, let's take a look at something like dark drama. That's obviously way too intense. But if we were to look at blue pop, that changes the feel of the photo quite a lot. You know, if we come off that, that's adding a lot of blue. I actually really don't mind that. We just might want to tone it down a little bit. Let's look at blue hour. That's quite nice as well. Gold now is going to really lean into that sunset feel, which could be quite nice. And then, of course, we've got things like storm clouds, which actually works really well for the photo, depending on what kind of vibe we want to go for. And then we've got things like sunrise and sunset, which are going to give different feels to the overall finished image. Now, with a photo like this, there's a few different routes we can go down, right? So actually what I'm going to do is right-click on the photo down here, and go ahead and click create virtual copy, because I might actually want to kind of almost save the photo at this point and allow myself the opportunity to then actually revisit how I want this photo to look, right? What do I want to actually do with this photo? And I might make two different versions. The initial version maybe being more of a stormy version, or maybe more of a colorful version, and vice versa. We'll do a second version where it's the opposite. So first up, I think we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at this blue pop. I quite liked that. Let's go ahead and add that to the photo. Now, what we'll do once we've clicked it is just bring this slider up here, the amount slider, down a touch. But I quite like what it's done to the clouds. I think it's pretty interesting. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and add another mask, this time a radial gradient, and it'll be something like this. Now, I'm actually going to put it a little bit below the sun, but what I'm going to do is bring the exposure up a little bit. I'm going to warm it up a little bit as well, something like that. We might come back and revisit that, and then come down and just add some negative dehaze, because I really want to emphasize that sunlight coming off the sun there. That looks good. Let's come back to the overall kind of editing tabs, the global actual sliders, if you like, so the ones that will affect the entire photo, and we'll bring the overall exposure back down to 0. I'm going to double click and bring that back down. I'm also going to bring the highlights down a little bit more, and perhaps even bring the shadows down just a touch now as well. I'm also going to go ahead and add a linear gradient in the top of the photo, something like this. Now that's obviously, I've dragged that right over the photo, but I'm going to move that up. I want to feather that quite a lot like that. And then just bring the exposure down at the top of those clouds and actually add even more blue to the top of those clouds. That's quite an interesting looking photo. I like the look of this. Let's go ahead and look at a before and after for how far we've got so far. Let's look at where we started. We have to go back over to the other version of this. This is how the photo started out. So we've got people, we've got, I think it looks nice, but we're lacking maybe a little bit of detail in the foreground. And, it's certainly not flat. It's a nice contrasty photo. But I think we've done a lot for the colors and for the feel of this image. It's a very vibrant image now. In fact, I might come in, bring that saturation up just a little bit and the vibrance up a little bit as well, because I really like leaning into that really colorful feel. Now, we could play around a little bit with the white balance of the photo. We could warm that up a touch. I don't want to go too crazy with that, but I think that looks quite nice. If I press Ctrl Z, I can undo that to see how that felt before. You know what? I actually think I like the contrast of the orange and the blue, so I think we'll leave that in. Now, what I might do is come down to the hue, saturation, and luminance tabs and just adjust some of those. So in the hue tab, I'm going to bring the orange just down a little bit, just sort of richen that up a little bit. Same with the yellow, bring that just a little bit towards the orange, not too much. In fact, almost not at all now. Maybe bring the orange back a little bit. And then with the blue, I'm just going to bring that over towards the kind of teal a touch, something like that. Now, let's switch over to the other version of the photo that we've got. So this one here, this is where we paused after we did that initial work. And let's go for a slightly different feel to it. So let's go for something like storm clouds for our adaptive sky preset. I'm going to go ahead and click that. And that's going to add these very dark, foreboding clouds to the image. We're going to probably end up pulling some of the color out of the image. Might even bring the vibrance down a little bit, maybe bring the saturation down a touch. I'm actually going to bring the contrast up a little bit. And for this, I'm going to bring the shadows up just a little bit and the clarity as well. And what we might do is a similar sort of thing to what we had been doing. So we're going to go ahead and create a new mask, this time from the sun, something like that. I'm going to bring that exposure up just like I did before. This time I'm not going to warm it up. I'm going to come down and do some negative dehaze. And I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger, something like that. So we're going for a much less colorful image here, which is quite fun. I'm going to bring the exposure back down to 0 as well. And just bring that black level down a touch as well. And we'll do something similar here. We're going to bring the linear gradient in from the top, similar to how we did before, and just darken the top of that sky, something like that. That might be too much, arguably, but I quite like it. Now, that looks quite different, I think you'd agree, to the other photo. Let's look at how the photo began life. So this is where we started, right? This is where we've taken it to with this version of things. Perhaps it's a little much. Let's bring the contrast down a little bit on this one I think those clouds are getting a little too dark, should we say. I'm actually going to go ahead and open the storm clouds mask here so we can just bring the amount down just a little bit because it feels a little bit too much. This is where we started, and then this is where we've taken it to. We've still got more detail in the foreground, but we've got a less colorful, more kind of stormy feel to that image. And then this is the other version we've gone to, a much more colorful, vibrant image. Now, I can tell you that in reality, in real life, this is much more true to how it looked to my eye when I was there. This is much closer to what it felt like actually being there. But it's very interesting how you can play around very much like this with the feel of the image to give a very different final edit. I'd be very curious to know which one of the two photos you prefer, the closer to monotone version we've got here, or the more colorful one. I think probably I prefer the more colorful one myself, but just with some small edits, so similar masking, some small edits to things like white balance, some small edits to things like color, and we have definitely changed the feel of the image, which I think is a powerful thing you can do with photo editing. We're really shaping the light and doing a bit of color grading to get that feel that we want from it. Now, I'd love to know, is there something you would have done differently to these two edits? Is there one edit you would have lent more into, do you think? Do you think you would have gone for the more colorful one because it was more true to how I felt the area actually looked when I was there? I'd love to know. Let me know down in the comments if you have any thoughts on any of that. Of course, you can check out a full list of all the kit we use for these photos, for these videos, everything down in the description, as well as all that stuff to go and check out. Otherwise, don't forget to like and subscribe. There's new stuff all the time. If there's anything specific you'd like to see in a future Tutorial Tuesday, let me know in the comments because I absolutely want to make the stuff that you guys want to see. Otherwise, all that's left for me to say is, until the next video, as always, thanks for watching.